Hey all, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, talking today about rewarding your players for creative play. And I think this is one of the most important components to running a sandbox homebrew like I do, because it's critical that the players feel like they're having an impact in your world, that they're affecting storylines. And that if they take the character, their attributes, their spell abilities, or their backgrounds, or any of the things that they've created in their character, and they come up with a way to use these in a sort of novel way, or they look at the situation you've presented and they say, hey, can I do this or can I do that? And you say yes to that, as opposed to no, no, no. They're going to feel invested. Your campaign is going to thrive. You're going to have those memorable stories that we all talk about in a role-playing game. So I'm going to identify 5 reasons why I think this is important, just areas to think about in terms of rewarding player creativity. And then I'm going to, mention a couple of things to be careful for when you do this. So the first thing that happens when you reward creativity is the players become invested in your world. Sometimes literally, and figuratively, but they see that the storylines, they're impacting the storylines. They're invested in those. You have players that are writing things down, or they remember the activities. And then literally they will start to build their empire, right? Like we used to have the old domain play with keeps and stuff. Well, this could be, even more multifaceted. So in my current campaign I'm running, the players had secured this area, this wild area for these people that live there against the forces of order that wanted to control them. And they helped them, get their rights that they had to this land. And as part of that, they had heard rumors that there was gold reserves out here. That's why the big shots wanted control of this. So they asked these people about it. And especially after they'd helped them, they said, oh yeah, we found gold nuggets and stuff. So the players said, we want to start a gold mine operation. We'll use these people. We'll hire a mining engineer. We have a dwarf in the party, and he knows some mining engineers, blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I made an investment. I took half an hour. I did the research on this. It might have been a little longer, but I drew up how much it would cost to excavate, what a mine engineer and a foreman and the equipment, the lumber and everything to build the support beams, all that kind of stuff to have a gold mine. And then it was presented. I gave it to them with how much they could expect. It wasn't a tremendous amount at first, and there was capital investment. Then they had to think about investors and whatnot. And again, all of this were negotiations and talking, and the players were really into this because they'd get some regular income going. And it was fun. It was fun to work out this initial deal and the idea, and then to see it come to fruition, and now it's happening. And for me, it's great because all sorts of storylines. Because above the ground and below, right? Because you're going to have people, bandit types or whatever, or the people that are mad in the power structure of this world that the players did this. And then when you're digging, you got to be careful you don't dig too deep, right? There's all sorts of things you can run into or poke through to the Underdark. I mean, it's just, and again, it's all because they decided to do this. And this investment in your world relates to my second thing, which is engagement in your world. When the players think, hey, we wanted to come up with this gold mine and the GM allowed us to do it, right? And we're not just fighting things, or we're not just having people show up and tell us, here's the next thing to do. I don't have anything else planned. You have to do this. We go to the next one and the next one. They lose engagement, right? It's like a video game, in which you can't really change anything. But that's not what a role-playing game is. I don't know what's going to happen in my world until the players interact with it, until they become engaged in the world, and from the first category, invested, and now they're interested. And, when you look at you play in enough games like I have as a player, and you see when players are not engaged, when they're side talk or it takes forever to get started and, people are distracted and whatever. Almost always it's because they're not engaged. They're not that interested. They don't know what's happening because you just have to tell them. This happens in modules, but it happens in sandbox homebrews. I've seen it. They don't know what's going on because if they're invested, if they're making things happen, they have a much better chance of being engaged and remembering what's going on in the story. And by engaged as well, it encourages them to come up with ideas, come up with unique solutions to problems. because they understand that I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to say yes. Now, again, I get some comments on my yes thing, always say yes, because people say, oh, if you say yes all the time. Well, no, it's not necessarily like an improv. Yes, and. It's oftentimes yes, but, right? I want to tell the king about this great idea. Well, yes, you can talk to him, but remember, he's the king. Just like real life, I'm going to tell the boss about my thoughts on this. Well, yes, you can go tell the boss, but he's the boss. He may say, just go sit down. And you may say, okay, well, I'm not interested in working here or whatever, right? But you may also say, well, it's a pretty good company to work for. And okay, he didn't want to do that. Are they going to just quit if you say no to something or yes, but? No, I don't think so. But you want to encourage that. You want to, and again, if it's reasonable, if it's a really good idea, say yes. And yes, and the gold mine, I did this work. Here's how much it is. I worked it out. Because when the players have plans to do, and when the players know that they can influence the story, when the players understand that it's their activities that are going to drive things, they're engaged. They're interested in the events, and they're interested in keeping track of the events. If they think that their input has no effect, it's just like watching a TV show. And you might be looking at your phone, you might be thinking about something else, like what I got to do at work tomorrow, not necessarily the game. Or just when are we going to roll initiative and have another battle? Not good. Another thing that happens when you encourage creativity is your stories gain more depth because they have an outside influence. It's an organic process, right? An organic idea, it's the sum of is greater than its parts. And when you have the players offering up ideas, offering up, ways to confront some problem that you never considered, and you say, okay, I'm gonna integrate that into my the way I set up this story. It goes in a direction you never thought, right? You're still driving the train here. You're still having to make the decisions of what the NPCs are going to do or what's the impact of these creative solutions. But everyone is involved in this process. And to just write all these yourself, when the players come up with some off-the-wall thing, again, as long as it makes sense, then, that impetus, that spark creates something that we all recognize as, man, we never saw that coming. And the story depth means memorable stories, right? Where we talk about these, not just after the session. Some of these you might talk months or even years about how so-and-so came up with this plot to get into the vizier's chambers and get back out. But then we didn't realize that what the vizier had wasn't what we really wanted. And now they knew that we were onto them. But then we did this. And all those things that happened because you said yes to the players coming up with a creative solution. You didn't just go, nope, the only way you can do this is to fight the vizier and all his underlings. So let's do it. And maybe the players, when they make their plan and you're thinking about it, again, you think it's reasonable. Yes, but the vizier does have a lot of spell abilities, and you got to be careful if you're trying to sneak in there because he may have thought of that. He may have a defense for that if it's reasonable. So, but when they do it, boy, the talk about we pulled that one off because the players are satisfied. And again, it keeps engagement and investment. I'm going to keep notice how they're all intertwined here. And the fourth thing here is campaign longevity. And again, it ties into everything else that I've talked about. But, why do campaigns peter out? Well, people had other things they had to do, real life considerations. They didn't have time. We couldn't get enough players, blah, blah, blah. But you know what I really think is the cause for it? Players feel like they're not engaged. They have no investment. Their ideas are ignored. And I'm just sitting here. Why am I doing this? Why am I spending 4 hours? I do have other things I could do. I really do. I think if you really analyze, people will say, oh, I got something else I got to do. I guarantee you, if your players are invested in the campaign, they're engaged, they feel like they're driving the story, they're going to stick around. They are. In fact, what will happen often, at least with me, is I get tired oftentimes before they do because I do have other, especially in some systems when you get to high level, it becomes a lot more work as a GM to come up with things. And if you get players that come up with ideas all the time, you got to deal with those too. You got to do some work, right? A sandbox homebrew is a lot of work. So you'll find you're getting tired of it before the players do, if they feel like they're driving the train. I'm just telling you, I've seen it happen. And then the final thing that I think people don't think about as much, but I think is critical, is rewarding the players' creativity also creates GM inspiration. It just is, they come up with some solution, and right on the fly, you've got to think about, well, what would the Vizier, would he have protection for this? And is their plan really good? And I want to reward it, but I want to make sure it's not a cakewalk. And, I want it to still be fun, but not like, oh, I didn't think of that, so I'll come up with a screw job, to make you, funnel you, railroad you into something. Because you want your players to inspire you. You want your players to make you enjoy the process of creating a homebrewed world. And nothing, seeds the ground like rewarding their creativity. All right, and then here's a couple things to watch out for when you're rewarding creativity, which is, you need to set some boundaries, some limits. You need to, especially if players start doing things like, oh, I want to use this spell in this novel way. I want this ability. I think it should also include this. Can I do this? And a lot of times as a GM, especially if you're busy in some battle or some situation, you might look at it and go, okay, we can do that. Well, then things can sometimes, other players will see that and try other things, and it starts to get a little out of control. So you always have to say to the players, like maybe afterwards, we did that thing, I'm not quite sure. Here's how I would do that in the future, and set a limit, set a boundaries. Because believe it or not, we all want boundaries at some level. We all want to know what the parameters are. We want consistency, but we want to have what are the limits and what are the boundaries? And if you're just, oh man, it's like the old rule of cool where the guy swings on the chandelier and then he wants to do that all the time. Right? Everywhere, is there a chandelier? I've seen it, right? And so you start to go, there's not one everywhere. Let's, keep going. Let's just play. Let's not try to, always look for some creative solution when the simple one, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the storyline. Another thing that sometimes can happen with, when you're rewarding creativity is people will spend a lot of time thinking about how they're going to do something in some creative way or some unique way. They don't want to do the standard way. Can we do this? Can we do that? And you start to get paralysis by analysis, or you start to waste the valuable time. And if you have one or two players that are always doing this, the other ones start to lose their engagement, right? They just start to go, we're spending way too much trying to think of this is the way we should just do this. Let's not be too creative here. And again, all these things, all my warnings here are very specialized, but they can happen when you start to say yes and yes. There are players that will try to take advantage. Part of it is because they want to be the star of the show. They want to be the guy swinging on the chandelier. They want to be the player that comes up with the really cool thing. And when they present that, and you go down the path of trying to decide how that's going to work, the other players are sitting over here watching. So there is a thing where, and this occurs all the time just in problem solving in an RPG game, where there's players that want to look at every possible solution. But when you're rewarding creativity, that can expand the possible solutions. So you just got to remember that at times okay, what are you guys going to do kind of thing. And that's where you can go, yes, but this, yes, but that. Yes, you could try to charm the major guard, but if that fails, you've ruined your whole thing. Or yes, your minor illusion spell could cause this and that, but just remember that there's some savvy people, they might have seen these before. That kind of thing where you're not trying to shut it down, but you're trying to say, let's be realistic about what we're doing here in this situation and not let the seed of creativity derail us. And a quick shout out to all my Patreons. Thank you so much for your support. I just did a curses PDF and video part 1, and I'm going to complete my cursed village thing in the next one. And if you like my channel, please like it. Give me a comment. Tell me about how you reward creativity to your players. And most importantly, my friends, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.